Happy Friday, everybody. I'm Tammy from Acclaimed.
I'm Kevin from Acclaimed.
And we meet for a weekly Facebook Live, and we tackle the conundrums that homeowners would face with their HVAC system. And Kevin solves one reader's or one viewer's question that they have. And are you ready for the Dear Kevin question, Kevin?
I am ready.
All right. So, it is signed, Furnace Filter Skeptic.
Okay.
Dear Kevin, I recently purchased my first home and I'm starting to learn the ins and outs of owning a home. My dad keeps telling me to check the filter on my furnace, but I don't really know what I'm looking for. What is the point of having a furnace filter, and what should I be looking for to keep my furnace running well through the winter? That is an absolutely great question, because that sounds like a lot of dads saying that. Check your filter, check your filter. It's still there. It's still there. I don't know what it's supposed to be doing, but I think it's still there.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like us every week and all of the Acclaimed staff every day.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important things that you can do to keep your furnace running properly, safely, and not having too much dirt going into it.
And what are you checking it for?
Well, what we're checking the furnace filter for is to make sure that it is not restricting the airflow through to the furnace. So your furnace needs a certain amount of air to go past it, because those things that heat up inside that get that heat in your house are called heat exchangers, and you need a certain amount of air blowing by those, so it takes that heat upstairs, but you don't want that furnace to get to a certain temperature. You don't want to get too hot. And so there's a very specific airflow that the manufacturers have in there to get that proper temperature. We call it a temperature drop or temperature rise. So when we're doing a preventative maintenance on a furnace, we actually measure the temperature difference between your regular air in your house and the hot air going out. And that's one of the really key things that we do, because it will tell us if there's something wrong with the furnace or if the filters are restricting the airflow. And there's all kinds of different air filters. And if you have a furnace or if you have an air conditioner with a duct system, you have a filter. Or if you don't have a filter, you need one right away. So if you can't find it, make sure that you call a professional, and make sure that you do find it. Make sure you know where it is. And once you're in a house for a while, you check it every month. But after 6 months, if you find, well, I didn't need to check that the last 5 months, well, then certainly check it every 3 or 4 months. But you want to change it, you want to check it more frequently than not, because when those do get restricted, because of the dust going through and dog hair and all these things that we have in our air, in our environment in the house, that's what chokes it off. During the cold winter months when it's really cold outside, I'd say at least 25% of all of the service calls that we go to, because people don't have heat in their homes, are solely due to a filter that was not changed out regularly.
Okay, so when you're checking your filter to see if it's time to change it.
That's right.
Okay, now how does someone know when they're looking at their filter if it's time to change it? What are the indicators that it's time to switch it out?
Okay, great question. So the first suggestion I would make is to always have a spare filter in your furnace room by the furnace. And the reason I find that really important is that if you don't have one, it's impossible to tell the difference between your old one and a new one. So if you have a new one there and you take your old one out, you can tell really quickly, wow, this thing needs to be replaced. And as well, if it's there, you're going to put it right in. And you won't tell yourself, well, I'll pick one up after work this week sometime and put it in, because then oftentimes we're all very busy. I always hope that people have priorities in their life that's more than their furnace, right? Things come up. So, but for those two reasons, having one there. And if it gets to kind of a medium gray color, because they almost all start off white.
So is it just, so first indicator is the color?
Yeah, the color is a good indicator. If there's a bunch of stuff that's on there that's actually falling off and you can actually see dust on the surface, definitely that's like, right away you gotta do that.
Okay, so color, and are you saying, because almost certainly as soon as you put a filter into the furnace and then you switch it out, if you let it even sit for 2 weeks, you should see some difference in the color. But when you're saying, now is there any other indicators in terms of what is on the filter that can be an issue?
No, there's not, because every house is different.
Okay.
So if you have a dog or a cat, you're going to find dog and cat hair there, but just that isn't going to restrict the airflow on the filter. So, and after 2 weeks, a lot of people actually wouldn't see any difference in the color of their furnace filter. So that's why I said not a light gray, kind of like a medium gray. Okay. And we'll throw some pictures up on the site. if we don't have some already, that maybe will give you a bit more of an indication between a new and an old. And I know that we've got lots of stuff out there on Facebook and all sorts of places about dirty filters and clean filters.
Like comparison.
Yeah.
Now, is there any way that you can look, hold it up to a light to compare in terms of blockage of how built up the barrier is? Or am I just kind of not at all?
No, I wouldn't recommend you do that.
Okay, all right. Well, because I know that I completely have a lot of empathy for furnace filter skeptic, which is saying your dad says check the filter, and I just don't want people to think that they need to change it more often than they need to. I know that you can't change it too often, other than it costing money and being expensive to replace that filter. Right. So a fairly good indicator would be in a 1 or 2 people home with a couple of pets. How often would somebody, is there such a thing as a general, like once a month would be too often?
Well, if I gave you an answer,
yes,
I would be lying to you.
Okay.
And I don't want to lie to anybody. I'm not going to lie and tell some that's always annoying to customers, because I get that question all the time, probably several times a day. And the honest answer is, like, I have no idea, because it depends on your pets and the shedding pets, and whether your fan of the furnace is on all the time, or if it's not, or if it's on part of the time. And duct cleaning's been done, and
how
dirty are your ducts? Like, there's just way too many variables.
Okay.
And that's why it's important to check it once a month. But after you've checked it once a month for a period of time, at that point, you should know, okay, well, I really don't need to check it more than every 3 months or every 6 months. So you'll get into that pattern if you're doing that maintenance, where you'll know yourself based on your house and your lifestyle and what your furnace is doing, how often it should be done. But if you're not into that pattern yet, it's definitely wise to do it once a month, so that you're learning what that cycle should be.
Because you don't want to block the airflow. And we do see some filters that come back when a technician will go out and bring back this show and tell the group of looking at this filter, and some of them look like there's almost cardboard on them, because there's been so long and it's been such a long time since it's been changed, and then it's kind of packed on there, and so then that would restrict the airflow. Yeah, and
we'll throw some stuff up here, and we'll maybe try to get some stuff on our website too, because we have a big archive of these dirty filters and all that kind of stuff. We send them in all the time. But you're right, they look like a piece of cardboard, and also they look like they're like totally like a bowl, because that fan is sucking them in. You've seen lots of those pictures that we've sent over the years, and it's just trying to get that air and sucking it through. And
it's fascinating. It's fascinating to us, isn't it, to see those kind of filters?
Well, and the other thing too, Tammy, is that if somebody's checking their filters, when it much before it gets to that stage, they would definitely know that I should change this thing.
Okay, and then the other question is, and what should I be looking for to keep my furnace running well throughout the winter?
Well, you know what, the number one thing there is to get that filter changed out. And what I like people to do is turn the furnace off. If you have somebody upstairs by the thermostat, turn the thermostat on. And you don't need to know all the inner workings of the furnace and all that kind of stuff. And just listen to your furnace start and listen to it run. And just use your ears downstairs by the furnace to see if you hear anything except for really smooth running and all that kind of stuff. So as a homeowner, you can do that at least. The other thing you can do is feel the air coming out of your vents. Make sure it feels normal and warm. And get it serviced once a year. I mean, most of our clients nowadays on the new furnaces, they're having us in once a year to do what we call preventative maintenance and tune-up. And so we come in and we check all of that for you, because there are a multitude of things that we check that you as a homeowner can't check. And so that's something that I would always recommend. But if you're not doing that, at least really pay attention to that furnace and run it and check that filter and clean it.
It's too early right now. We don't have very much snow out.
Okay.
But when the snow becomes drifts, and I'm talking about for the whole winter, what this person can look at. Another thing that causes homeowners some issues is when they have drifting of snow that gets in and blocks their intake. Would that be? Can you touch on that?
Yeah, it's you definitely want to make sure that you know where your furnace vents are. So if you've got a high efficiency furnace, that means it's got plastic pipes on the top of the furnace, which are white pipes. And almost always those are going out through the side of your house, not through the roof like they used to. And so knowing where those are is a really, really smart thing to do. And if your furnace is not working, that's when you would go outside, and that would be one thing to check, is to check that those pipes don't have snow in front of them or there's ice building up inside of them. It's really rare, actually, that I've ever seen snowdrift go into a pipe like that. But what is really quite common, depending on the weather, is that with the humidity and the cold, the pipe called a furnace intake pipe, which goes into the furnace from outside, that builds up with like a really, really icy slurry called hoarfrost. It's a dirty word for it, but it's because it caused problems, I guess. It's a terrible word.
Well, and we experienced that. It seems that hoarfrost becomes more of a demon in our world when we have high humidity and then it gets cold.
Yeah, that's right. The combination between high humidity, no wind, and cold weather, that's it. And last year we did have a stretch where I think there's 2 or 3 days, maybe on 2 occasions, where that was actually the case. And we can go sometimes 2 or 3 years without having ripe conditions for that. But last year there were a couple of times where it was really, really a common thing.
And people I know we had so many calls coming in because in that fresh air intake, when the air is restricted, it's a safety mechanism to turn your furnace off, correct?
Yeah, that's right. You know, all these modern furnaces, that's one of the great things. They're super, super efficient. They're very quiet. And one of the big things, like I think all things these days, there's lots of safety things on them. So it's very, very difficult to have your furnace these days doing something that's going to harm you or harm the furnace because it will shut down. And I guess it's kind of
on the higher efficiency ones.
On the higher efficiency ones, and even the mid efficiency ones sometimes too. So that's why your furnace quit a lot of the time, is because of all these safety mechanisms. But the safety mechanisms usually trip and stop your furnace because something is wrong.
Okay, so there's some hope, and I guess that's the other conundrum we don't know, is whether or not this furnace is an older model or a mid or a new higher efficiency. But you know what we do is we had a kind of a soft launch at the end of last year, and we've kind of let it go quiet, but we'll be revisiting that as the perfect Christmas present for the person that you don't know what to get. Your daughter, your son that's moved into a house and they're newlyweds, which was get to know your HVAC system, a little tutorial that we did a soft launch for last year. So the furnace Filter Skeptic could have us in to do a tune-up to their furnace and get a one-to-one tutorial, kind of like Furnace 101, and learn about your furnace and what all those pipes do and all those switches do, and so we can get some more information. We'll launch a little bit more of that information towards the end of the month and into December for the hard to purchase person that you need to find something that's awesome and just really cool for them that get familiar with their furnace system.